Hello my friends! Today's video is about all the exciting stuff being registration and insurances. So boring, I know, but there's been so much I have learnt in the process of living van life, like buying a van, what I wish I'd known beforehand, and renovating the van. All of the things that I have learnt are based off my experience in Western Australia. So there are different rules and regulations for different states in Australia. So please just make sure you do your own research. I'm not telling you that any of this is right or wrong. This is literally just my experience. Some of it I may be wrong about, I'm not entirely sure. But anyway, I'm just going to take you through what I have learnt along the way. Just realised I need to put something like a nice affirmation on my back wall here, because when I'm videoing you can't actually see my world map on my roof, but wouldn't it be nice if I just had a positive affirmation there for you to read while I'm talking? Anyway, I digress. So the first thing we'll talk about is registration. So when I bought Gypsy, I knew very little about modifications, the type of different things that the van needs to be registered as, etc. So when I bought Gypsy, she was an ex-disability vehicle, so she used to be a 10-seater, and when I bought her, it had already been, the seats had been taken out. There was another seat here, so it was a 3-seater, and it was a camper van. You know, a gentleman had fitted it out, wanting to go travelling with his wife, but she wasn't so keen, so lucky for me. So I bought her without actually really looking at the registration and what it was registered as. And he'd done all the renovations but not done the right processes for having the vehicle registered in the correct way. So I found out later that if I am removing seats from a vehicle, then that needs to be approved by Department of Transport. So I'd been in Gypsy for probably about, I don't know, maybe it was about a year when someone sort of brought it to my attention, and I flipped out at the time because I thought, gosh, I'm driving around in a vehicle that's not registered properly. But then I spoke to a few different people, and the process to actually get it registered properly was pretty much like what they were saying was you've got to gut everything, you know, make sure that all the holes have been filled, an engineer's got to do a report, and it was just so much to take on. And I didn't understand it, and I thought, oh, you know, what's going to happen? You know, I just thought I'm just going to leave it. I don't advise doing that, because one of the things I didn't think about was insurance. If I had an accident, then insurance, they may not insure me because the vehicle was not registered properly. So I think it is important to think about these things when you are doing van life. You know, you may have bought like a vehicle that had been used as a courier or something, so there was never any seats in the back, and it might be fine. So I feel like every time I ring DOT, Department of Transport, I never get a clear answer. It's like, read this form, look at that form. No one will give you a definitive yes or no. So, and even the inspectors that I've spoken to, it seems to be, you know, what will be approved is subject to whoever's looking at it that day. I suppose that's the same with any government department, isn't it? So anyway, when I had the pod installed on my roof, that kind of opened up a can of worms because I needed to that was a real modification to the vehicle, and that has to be approved. So because that was being approved, I didn't realise when I took it to be approved that it was actually everything in the van that they have to look at, the inspectors have to look at. It's not just the pod. So I found this out. There was a bit of a process going on at this time, and so it was kind of like I went and saw this one inspector, and he said, well, he goes, what is it registered as? Is it still registered as having more seats? And I was like, I actually don't know. So that was when I rang Department of Transport, and they said, no, it's actually still registered as a 10-seater. So the inspector said, well, you need an LH1 form or something. So I had to actually go to some registered mechanic. DOT were telling me any mechanic can fill out this form, whereas then when I went to my normal mechanic, he said, no, I'm not registered enough to do that. So then he sent me to someone else. So these are all the challenges I've been facing that I was complaining about in my recent video. So I wound up, so my normal mechanic, I will link them below because they are amazing, just such a hell of a nice guy. And I go to them regularly, and they are in North Perth, I think it is, and so I can just go to Hyde Park and spend the day there and work from there for the day while they do my van. And they've always been very reasonably priced. I've never had any issues. They're great. So when he recommended me to this other mechanic, then I thought, okay, good, I'll go to them if they've come from my mechanic who I trust. So I went to this other mechanic, and so my initial thought process was I had to go back to the other inspector who'd said I'd need that form, but then these new mechanics said no. The way it works is that they will assess everything when I bring it in. So when the initial inspector had looked at my van without doing the full inspection, he had pointed out a couple of things that were issues, such as he could see holes in my vehicle where the seats had been, and those holes need to be filled. So when they need to be filled, it's literally you could just put the bolt back in. So an example is this bolt here. So there was a hole there, and even though it's not going to the outside of the vehicle, for whatever reason, it has to be filled. So I still actually had some of the bolts from when I was renovating Gypsy in the first place. So I just did that, and then I got some other bolts from Bunnings and just did that. Another thing he mentioned was that the way I'd set up my battery and my inverter behind my seat, the rack was a little bit, moved a little bit. So then I just did some reinforcing on that, put a few more screws in. And I literally just went through the van and just made sure everything was secured, that as many holes as possible were filled. It's a bit weird because like this hole here, I don't know if you can see that on camera, or this hole here, they were holes that would, like they didn't have to be filled for some reason. It's just the seatbelt ones. I don't know why that is. Who knows? Bureaucracy gone mad. So I did all of that. I took it to these mechanics, and I will link them below as well because, my goodness, they were so unbelievably helpful. The lady at the reception was helpful. The workshop gentleman was helpful. I was floundering. I really didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know, was there going to be another form that needed to pop up, etc. So anyway, they gave me so much great guidance. So I did have to pay for a permit to have the modification done. So I had to pay for that permit, which was $30 or $40 with Department of Transport. That was pretty easy doing that online. Then I took the vehicle to them with all of the paperwork, and they went through everything. And what I didn't realise, if there's any issues with the vehicle, they can't just put it on hold and fix it and then come back a few days later. It's either approved or rejected that day. So it cost me like $180, $190 for that inspection, plus 100 and something else, 150 odd for the seat modification one as well, which is a different form. So it was like over, $350 or something I was spending that day. Okay, so I'm going to take a step back, and I'm going to take you through all the different things that you need before I carry on. So the very first thing that I had to do, and I don't know if this is actually absolutely necessary, but when it comes to government, I like to try and follow the rules I'm provided just to make sure that everything runs smoothly. So there is a pre-approval process. So when I was looking at the pod, I was ringing around and I got awfully worried because Department of Transport was saying I needed pre-approval before I got the pod done. And I was talking to Sean from Campervan Roof Conversions, and he said, look, we've had so many done in WA already, it'll be approved, it's fine. So I still went ahead without getting the pre-approval, but I had lodged the pre-approval. And I'm kind of glad I did. So the pre-approval did come in like a week before I was actually due to get the pod done. So that was handy. But that pre-approval was handy in having it all registered properly, because they did ask for that when I took it for inspection. So at your own risk whether you do that or not. So I had the pre-approval. I had to get the engineer's report done. So the engineer went through and he just took photos and he did all that. So then his report needs to go through to Department of Transport. He will submit that, and then the Department of Transport will then issue a certificate. to say that they approve of the pod installation. And the inspector will need that certificate when they lodge. So then the inspector will also lodge the form for me, the LH whatever it is. And I'm sorry, I will try and link all of those sort of forms below if I can work out what was lodged. So he will need, yes, the engineer certificate. You will need to get a, before you do all this as well, you'll need to get a modification permit from DOT, which is quite easy. You just log into your online, and then it's like $40 just to request a permit to have a modification done. More money. So I did that. I provided them, so the engineer's certificate, the permit, the pre-approval, and then the inspectors will lodge all the other forms for you, which is great. So the inspector then will either approve or reject, like they go through your whole van. And so they also need, one thing I forgot was you need to weigh the vehicle as well. So they'll need the weighbridge certificate to show how much the vehicle weighs with all the modifications done. I'll take you through that in a moment. So, okay, so that's all of the different items that they will need. Then they will either approve or reject, and away you go. DOT will, send you through a confirmation of all of that. So some of the challenges I faced, the weighing of the vehicle. So it's just been ridiculously hot in Perth, and it was still like a 35-degree, 40-degree day, and I had to take out as much as I possibly could from the van because I've obviously got all of my stuff in here. So I had to take out as much as I could because I didn't know what max weight it could be. And when I rang the inspector about it, so on my registration, my TAIR, which is just the vehicle as it is like without all the extra stuff in here, is 1995. And I thought I had to get it down to that. But that doesn't account for the amount of bodies in the vehicle, all of that. So that's just the vehicle with nobody in here, nothing else in here. So I rang my inspector and I was like, what is the max TAIR that I can have? And he was like, well, it actually just kind of depends. DOT have their own algorithm, so they take, if it's reducing from a 10-seater to a 2-seater, they take out the weight of the seats and all of this. So I was a bit stressing about that. So I originally weighed the vehicle and with everything in it was 2.7 tonne. And I was like, oh, that seems really heavy. So I went to my daughter's. I took out as much as I could, all of my mattresses, my bedding, all of the cushioning, everything from inside. I took out 2 of the drawers, but I actually couldn't take out the other 2 drawers because of everything else I've got in here. So that I tried to empty those as best I could, but the drawers themselves are really heavy. So I took it back after I'd done all of that, and it weighed 2.5 tonne. And I just went to the local tip, and they've got a weighbridge there. So you drive in, they tell you to turn around and drive out, and then you hop out of the vehicle, and then they will weigh the vehicle. They'll take your VIN number, and they put it on the receipt. So the receipt that you provide, the inspector will have the VIN on there for confirmation and the confirmation of what it weighed that day. So it was 2.5 tonnes. So that was accepted by the DOT. So that was wonderful. But yeah, so I had to empty it all out, and then I went back to my daughter's and put it all back in again. Yeah, it was fun times. So I was able to do all that, like a week in advance of me seeing the inspector. So then the day that everything was being inspected, there was an issue with the engineer's report, and I won't go through the whole process of what happened. But anyway, once again, these mechanics were like so helpful. They were calling people at DOT and trying to, because they felt so bad for me. And I was floundering, like, I don't know what's going on. And I'm trying to ring my engineer. And anyway, it all got sorted, and there was literally nothing wrong with the vehicle at all. And I was so pleased because I've done most of this myself. And I said to the guy, I'm like, I was actually really stressed that you'd find things wrong because I'd done it myself. And he goes, well, that's the problem. A lot of people don't understand. But he said, you'd done a really good job. And I was like, yeah, yeah, I have. So that was a really nice little pat on my back that I really needed that day. So that's the registration process that I've been through recently. So I wish I'd known a lot of that sort of stuff earlier. When you are converting a vehicle, and I'm still a little bit unclear with Department of Transport on what is classed as a camper van, because I don't have any fixed cooking facilities, which I believe is the sort of one of the requirements to be a camper van. So I actually met up with a couple of followers recently, and just because they wanted to see the pod, and so we got chatting, and I didn't realise, they actually informed me, when you are registered as a camper van, your registration every year is cheaper by quite a significant amount. In my eyes, it's like $300 cheaper. So yeah, that was interesting. I didn't realise that. So yeah, I'm still unclear whether this is actually registered as a camper or not. I don't think they did, because I didn't have to get my electrical tagged. Yeah, and I don't have like fixed bathroom facilities. I don't have fixed cooking facilities. I do have a sink and a bed in here, which sort of leads into insurances. So I went with KT Insurance because originally I had just insured the van as a van, and I was facing challenges like, even though she's a 2012, she'd only done 66,000 Ks when I bought her. I bought her for 32,000, but I could only insure her for 22,000 because they go on the year, not the mileage of the vehicle. So for quite a while, I actually kind of really had her underinsured in my eyes. So anyway, I thought, now that I'm doing all this right, I should probably really look into my insurance. And to be honest, I really wanted some sort of contents insurance as well, because I've got quite a lot of equipment now for my filming, a lot of cameras and things. So I really wanted to try and get those insured as well. So I looked into KT Insurance, who specialise in camper vans and caravans and things. And they said that as long as you have a bed and I think a sink, that was all they needed to make, like, if you don't have a camper van, they won't insure you. So that was all they needed. They didn't need you to have fixed cooking facilities or anything. In regards to how the van was registered, they said they didn't care how it was registered. I'm not sure how true that is. But they just said, as long as I've got those two things in here, that's all that matters to them. I was able to do an agreed value with them, so I was able to do it for 38,000 agreed value, because I have done, and I probably could go higher because of all the modifications I've done, but I've also done a lot of mileage in the meantime, and and then I was also able to add, increase, I think that included 2,000 of contents, but I increased it to 8,000. So I pay just over 1,700 a year for that insurance, which I think is reasonable when you look at it. I had done a lot of research in the past on insurances, and what was really bothering me with normal car insurance, NRMA seemed to be taking over everyone, and because of that, I think it's causing a bit of a monopoly in the insurance sector, because my insurances were going up like 20% in a year, which is complete madness. Like, insurances are expensive enough as it is, but to jump that much in 1 year is crazy anyway. So every time they went up, I'd always jump to another insurer because, sorry, you've lost me at that point. And I just don't want to stick with a big, company that's taking over everything, because it does create that monopoly and unfair prices. Anyway, for all the good it does, I'm sure it, but that's just me. So I'm not going to say that KT Insurance are the be-all and end-all. I know that there are other insurers out there that do this sort of insurance, and I haven't had to do a claim through them, so I don't know what that claim process is like. And to be honest, I think, you try and look at reviews, but most insurers and banks and all those sort of things, it's all the same, If you've got anything else to add, if you've had an experience where you'd like to recommend someone else because you've had a great experience with them, please feel free to do so in the comments. If anything I have said today seems incorrect, please put it in the comments. Or if you've just got anything else to add, make sure you put it in there, because this is, we've got a bit of a community going on here, and we're all helping each other, and I absolutely love it. It's amazing. So we are all learning through my experience. I'm really putting myself out there for judgment, but So nothing I say, please don't take it as the be all end all. It's not my, recommendation. It's just my experience of what I've gone through. So please do your own research and use your own discretion as to what you choose to do. But that's the process and what I've experienced. So thank you for watching.